Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Coach Me Plus. Coach Me Plus is the leader in athlete management software and a product that we've been lucky enough to implement here for over 2 years now. The product in and of itself is exactly what you need it to be, guys, with options ranging from being a workout provider, as in sending the workout directly to the student athletes' phones, to being a place where you can communicate with them and bring together multiple streams of data to be its own dashboard for you, your coaching staff, or the athletes. Or you can use what we've added to our menu of Coach Me Plus activities, and that's the hydration station, where all of this information that is provided is based off of research from the Corey Stringer Institute, where we're looking at weighing in versus weighing out and then providing optimal hydration strategies for the student athletes by them selecting through the menu and tapping on what they'll take home with them and what they're consuming prior to the next practice when all the numbers at the top are lined up green. It's something we've had really good success with and the kids have really bought in on. Just another great example of the awesome product that you can find at CoachMePlus.com. Guys, hop over to CoachMePlus.com today and check it out. It's a product I guarantee you won't be disappointed with. Hey everybody, if you enjoy the podcast and the content it provides, be sure to hop over and check out the community. The community is an exclusive members website that is just an extension of what we do here in July at the Central Virginia Sport Performance Seminar. What it is a combination of video lectures, a coach's corner with your Monday morning take-home information, and a forum where you can talk about anything and everything related to the field of strength and conditioning. In the community, you'll find content added each month from some of the top practitioners in the world, ranging from PhDs to high-level coaches, bringing you exactly what they're doing with their athletes or their research at the present moment. On top of that, an additional discussion by coaches bringing you that Monday morning information, things that you can add to your training program right away. Tying that in with the opportunity to discuss with coaches around the world in the forum on anything and everything from the topics addressed in these presentations to whatever you're seeing in your daily life as a coach. If this sounds like the right thing for you and your staff, go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and try it out for 48 hours for just $1. If you like it, you're signed up, ready to roll, and you're jumping into all the great content added each month. If not, feel free to go ahead and cancel at any time. No questions asked. We're really excited about what we're building in the community and hope you are too. Go ahead and hop over to cvasps.com/community and check it out today. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of sitting down to talk training and coaching with no other than Elite FTS's Dave Tate. Dave starts talking about the conjugate method and the role of the dynamic effort method and how long it took him to get into actually training with bands and chains. He then breaks down for us where bands and chains can fit with novice athletes, even though the dynamic effort method is really meant for athletes who have a much higher training age. He then touches on learning and the role of finding the whys in the training process. And then he starts talking about mentorship and where that fits and really discusses the role of it and how to find one and why it's so important. And this leads us into our last topic, and that is the idea of living as if and working to figure out what the best have done to become the best, not just emulating them when they are the best. This is truly a fantastic talk, guys. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Let's get right to it. Dave, thank you so much for being on with us this week.
Thank you.
Yeah, really excited for this. And like we were just starting to talk about, watching an Instagram live you did when you were driving into the compound this week, talking about some things that you've seen based on the training you did, getting to where you are in the weight room, and some misconceptions that people have with what that whole progression is. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your views on some of those things and where you see that fitting in this whole training, coaching, lifting, the whole deal culture that we're all encapsulated in.
I think that, and I hate to sound like I joke around and say that when I was younger, I had many conversations with, you know, older lifters and older business people and mentors or whatever you want to call them. You know, I just call them associates or friends, where, and I call them, you know, breakfast conversations or lunch conversations. And I would listen to what they were saying, and I would say, man, that's bullshit. You're full of shit. What do you fucking squat? What do you know? You know, what's the last thing you've really fucking done? And now I'm that dude. You know, I'm on the other side of the table. So the key thing to realize is when you're when you do get to the point where you're on the other side of the table, don't forget what it's like when you were on the other side. You know, meaning most of the people that listen to the things that I'm going to say they're not going to get it. You know, but if it just resonates a little bit with a few of them, then it's going to help tremendously. When it comes to, you know, the one question you were talking about in particular is, I get asked quite frequently, you know, when should I use bands and chains, you know, with dynamic work? And my training bias is conjugate. I've never stated otherwise. That's not to say that I don't understand block training and other forms of training very well. It's just where my bias falls. I think it's important that anybody who is in this field does state what their bias is, because it makes it easier for people who are listening to them to understand where they're coming from and where they fall. Because just because my bias may be different than somebody else's doesn't mean that I can't learn from them and they can't learn from me. It's when you don't know where their bias falls where things get a little cloudy. Um, and this usually means they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, because everybody has some type of bias. But anyhow, I get asked a lot about the chains and the bands, and I was at Westside when these things were introduced. I was at Westside before these things were introduced. So, I mean, Louis was doing the dynamic effort method well before I got there in '91, but I was there for a couple years before chains were introduced. Then we used chains for a few years before bands were introduced. Then, so say 2 years of dynamic work before using chains, and then maybe another 3 years before bands came into play. So if I want to really advise people, if they're going to follow the same path that I followed, well, then do the dynamic effort, actually do basic linear periodization for 10 years, and then go into more of a conjugate type of Westside approach, do that with straight weight for a few years, and then do the chains for a few years. And then you're ready to start using bands. And then when you want to start asking me about circumax phases, it's like, oh my God, are you fucking kidding me? You know, that's like 15 years into the training process for me. But that's not a true reality, because things can be, you know, expedited and put in sooner. And there are reasons to use bands for a beginner, which wouldn't be the same reason as an advanced. The important aspect that I think gets lost is technique. You know, you have to have very solid technique before you start implementing any type of accommodating resistance. You know, for force, you know, it can be argued that bands can help develop technique, but for force, you have to have solid technique. If you don't, then you're just doing yourself a disservice.
No, and that's awesome. So let's keep going down that rabbit hole a little bit then. So where do you see, break down that idea of using the bands with more novice lifters, and where coaches could be looking at things that could help them improve?
Okay. When I was training at Westside, I was working as a personal trainer in a corporate fitness center. So very few athletes, maybe one or two athletes. The rest just, you know, 35 to 50-year-olds that hadn't been able to work out or hadn't trained for 5, 6, 7 years. So very, very deconditioned adults. And even with the athletes I was consulting with, you know, on the side, and when I was on the road with Louis, two things that I found were the most difficult to be able to teach in the squat, we'll just use that as an example, were the ability to apply force, and that's to stand up using compensatory acceleration, or just to stand up with force, to stand up with authority, to stand up with, you know, neural drive. You know, I'm trying to make this so everybody can understand what I'm talking about. So when you stand up, you're standing up with the most possible force you can. That's very hard to teach to a beginner. Really hard to teach. They don't grasp it. And the other thing is tightness. Tightness was a very hard thing to teach to these beginners. because they're used, and if it's an athlete, they're used to playing loose. You don't get all muscles tight if you're running. Some are tight, some are loose. So they're loose to kind of, or used to kind of staying loose. So when you're telling them to get under a bar and tighten everything, it's a really foreign concept. And you can sit there and you can, push on them and push them and jab them with sticks. And I came up with all different kind of things to try to do. But what I found was, even if I just used a broomstick and I put a light band or a monster mini band on the bar for the squat, as soon as they took it out of the rack, it kind of threw them around. So the neural response to them getting thrown around was to immediately get tighter. So then I was able to say, okay, this is what you're supposed to feel like. And then worry about how you breathe, and how to hold that tightness. But that immediately showed them that. Then if I had them sit down onto a box and they tried to stand up as they normally would, out of a chair or off the toilet or anything else, just with normal speed, they weren't able to get up. They'd have to stand up with force. So just by using a little bit of band tension, I was able to at least get them to experience what standing up with authority felt like and what staying tight felt like. And so that's when now that's completely different than using the bands as an accommodating resistance to, help with, balancing the strength curve and increasing force development. This is a completely different thing. This is just a teaching tool to teach things that I found were to teach in the squat. And it also worked with the bench and some other lifts as well. But you have to, play around with the band tension, and that's pretty simple to do.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think too that kind of that leads right into is, it's taking things and taking a step back and breaking it down and using different methods and things to teach people comes back to how things are interpreted by the coach based on what people before them have been doing. You're a guy that's been in the game who really has been a driving force to a lot of what's going on in strength and conditioning. When you look at how people are interpreting different things, whether it be from the sport performance realm or just how athletes are working all the way down to business, what are some things that you're seeing that people can do better to make this whole thing work as a better unit?
Learn, just take more. Don't don't look. I don't want to sit there and say, don't look for the easiest route, because this isn't a new thing. Looking for the easiest route is not a new thing. It's we've been doing this. I mean, people have been doing this ever since I was in elementary school. Cheating on tests, writing on little tiny pieces of paper to stick in the palm of your hand. So there's always looking for the easiest route. So, and sometimes that can bring out, new ideas and creativity. But what I see now is, they want to learn from the easiest source instead of trying to dig a little bit deeper to understand why they're doing what they're doing. So they just want to be told, do this, as a coach, be told this is what you do this with your athletes, and that's what you do. And it's always been that way. I mean, when I was coming up, somebody, if whoever was the national champions, somebody would get a hold of their program, and then that would filter down, and that's what every high school coach would do. Um, and it was a mistake back then as well, where the good coaches were the ones that were trying to develop their own training philosophies, because they wanted to know why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? And because everybody's dealing with a different toolbox, everybody's dealing with different lumber, and everybody's building different houses, so there's no modular homes when it comes to strength and conditioning. There's just too many different interrelated parts and the only ones that we really have true control of is what we know, and what we know we don't know. So our own education, that's the only thing we really have control of. And a lot of people just put minimum amount of time into that to begin with, and they just solely rely on ebooks. They don't ever look into textbooks. They don't ever seek people out. When I was coming up, you would you would go visit, these coaches to be able to learn from them, because you can learn more in 2 days of hands-on speaking with any coach than you're ever going to learn from anything online, even if it's a webinar or whatever it is, because there's more to nonverbal communication than people are, they seem to have forgotten that aspect of learning. It's how much of it goes into that, how much of it goes into, dissecting what's in front of you and then being able to ask questions specific to your own needs instead of, a larger audience. So there, I think it's become a little more sheltered, you know, personally sheltered, where if the individual starts reading something like super training, which by the way, if you're to search Google for the best strength training books or the best books any coach should have or anything of that, every list you're going to see the book super training on. But yet you start asking people how many have actually read it, and the number drops tremendously. So if it's on every list but nobody reads it, that's kind of like, it's a clue, and if it's on everybody's list, that's also a clue. But what typically happens is they'll start digging into it and say, oh shit, this is too confusing for me. And instead of approaching it like they would a textbook and spending a year, or more figuring it out and what they don't understand, looking up those parts and seeing what it actually means, everybody has the capacity to learn. If you look in a book and you see some concept you don't understand, the cool thing today is you can Google this shit and you can figure out what it means. Whereas I had to call people, I had to get a hold of people like Sif and Louis Simmons and ask them, what the fuck does this mean? Just to be able to get through that section. Where I think a lot of coaches now they just say, fuck it. They don't do it. And then they'll find an article and say, that's it. That's the gospel. But, the further away you get from the textbooks, the further away you're kind of getting from science, and the further you're getting away from, what's validated and what's really not validated. And this isn't to disregard under the bar knowledge. The under the bar knowledge is just as important, if not more important. But the only way you're really going to get that is to go see the people as well. So it's not easy, and that's, the knowledge is out there, and we have vast amounts of education, but the means of getting the best education really hasn't changed in the past 40 years. Going to see people who know what the fuck they're doing and legitimate textbooks.
No, I love that. And I think that the one thing too that a lot of people I think are afraid of is like making that call and being like, well, no, you can't come see me, but I mean, shoot, we drove up there and spent the day with you and Lou just a few years ago. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of time people are like, yeah, no, you're not coming in my weight room.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't, the answer is always no if you don't ask.
Right.
It's just, to me, it's a ridiculous thing. Like, if you want to succeed at whatever you're choosing to do, and there's people that you feel can help you, and you're not at least asking questions or trying to build some type of relationship, especially online the way things are now, and you're going to fail. One of the other questions I get asked over and over and over is, how do you find a mentor? I'm like, oh my God, if you have to ask that, then you already suck. Because those will be the people that are going to send out messages and emails saying, will you be my mentor? It's like, what is this? Like junior high, and you're asking me out on a date? That's not how this works. It's, you develop trust. You know what I'm saying? You got to develop a relationship, because, and now it's even a trickier situation, because to me, a mentorship is not where you go pay somebody $4,000 to sit with a group of 5 other people and just jerk each other off with stupid information you can find online for free. A mentorship is just building a network of people that, have a vested interest or not vested interest in helping you. And even if it's not a financially vested interest, anytime somebody begins to try to help somebody else, it is a vested interest, even if there's no finance involved whatsoever, because it's your advice. If somebody's asking me training advice and I give them bad advice and they get hurt, I kind of have a vested interest to make sure the advice that I'm providing isn't going to fuck them up. I want them to do better. It's the last thing you want to do is give somebody shitty advice. And I think that's pretty much true for anybody except trolls.
No, no doubt. And I think too, the other thing that that has to be a two-way street, like those relationships aren't going to be built just by that message being like, will you mentor me? It's like, well, why am I supposed to care about you? Like, what are you going to do to help build this? Like reaching out is one thing, but providing value both ways is extremely important.
Yeah, yeah. I can say that. It's just it's understanding the time, and what it takes. I mean, it takes. I answer every one of my DMs on Instagram, and that, yes, it takes me maybe an hour and a half every day, but that's not that much time for the value I get out of it. So people are going to say, "What do you mean the value you get out of it?" Well, the value I get is I get to help people like we used to on our Q&A years ago when our Q&A was really popular. We still have a Q&A now, on the website, but it isn't as fast or it isn't as easy as what, say, Instagram is, until the DMs get fucked up like they will, as every other private messaging service ever has. But it's not just providing value to the person who's asking the question, it's providing value to the person who's answering the question. And I think that gets lost a lot of times, that people think that just because somebody, just because I answer a question for somebody, there's an expected return. They require elite FTS. And that's just bullshit. I can go through and probably name 15 or 20 coaches that I've sat down at least 4 or 5 hours with to help show them what their training philosophy was, and then be able to note that within the 12, say 6 to 12 months, 24 months after meeting with them, they spent over $300,000 to $400,000 on a weight room from a competitor's company. And I can sit there and say, you know what, that's bullshit. That was a waste of my time. That fucking guy doesn't value my anything that I said whatsoever. And I can get caught up in all that. But that's not how the universe works. When I give out, the universe determines how I'm going to get back. So it may not be from that person I'm actually giving to. When you give a gift, it's like forgiveness. You don't forgive somebody so much so for them. You forgive them for yourself so you can move on. When you give people, you give, so it's a gift that allows you to continue to learn, to hone your craft even better. So there's a lot that goes into that giving than just giving to help somebody else out. There's a huge personal reward just in the act of doing that.
No, 100%. And I think too, when we're talking about this whole mentorship and building and give and take, we were talking before we started recording about living as if.
Mm-hmm.
How about we talk on that for a little bit, because I think that ties all three of these together really well.
I like to take a lot of quotes that get thrown out, motivational quotes, and like turning them upside down. I do it just because it's fun for me, but it also can change the paradigm. So one of the things that I've always heard, and hell, I used to give seminars where it was one of the main points of my closing, was to act as if whatever you want to be. So if you want to be the greatest powerlifter in the world, act as if you are. If you want to be a millionaire, act as if you are. If you want to be, the greatest coach in the world, act as if you are. But there's a huge problem with this, because once somebody gets to that point, and I'll use powerlifting as the example, once somebody gets to an elite level powerlifter, what they actually have to do to stay there and to be at that level is completely different than the person who's still climbing to get there. Completely different. Where the elite level lifters, working with them, it's usually more a matter of making sure they come into the meet as healthy as they possibly can be. And that means a lot of pulling back, a lot of what some people would say deloading, a lot of, no accessories this week, put them in this week. There's a lot of auto regulation to be able to get them to peak, because, they're closer to their genetic threshold. or their genetic limit. So you're just trying to put the best numbers together, and to put 5 pounds on, a 900 pound or an 800 pound squat, it's really fucking hard to do compared to putting it on a 250 pound squat. So you can't mimic the behaviors of what the people at the top of the hill are doing because they're at the top of the hill. It's completely different. You need to mimic the behaviors of the people climbing the hill. The same as, if you want to be a millionaire, you don't want to mimic the behaviors of the millionaire because first off, you don't have $1 million. So you can't invest the way that they invest. You can't, if you're broke ass poor, you can't go out and buy a pack of pins. You need to go to the bank and take the free pins that are sitting on the counter. There's a disconnect there where you have to strive for what they strove to be and do that. And then, put yourself with people who are better than you, who are the same as you, and people who are under you in a way. I don't like to use the word under you because nobody's really better than anybody else. But if it's a powerlifting gym type setting, you want lifters who are stronger. That way you can learn and watch from what they're doing, not act like what they do, but learn. You can see how technically efficient they are. You can notice how they approach the bar. You can notice so many things that you can't see online that you can only notice in the gym. Then if you're also training with people at the same level as you are, you have somebody to compete with. You got that drive, like, fuck you. You're not getting me today. I'm going to get you. Then if you have people that are under you, and then you teach them, which helps you to learn. The more you teach, better you get. So that's kind of the overreaching message. If you act as if, you're already there, then you're just fooling yourself. You got to act as if you are where you are and do something about it. So if you suck, you got to act as if you suck and do what you need to not suck anymore. Don't act as if you're great and don't see what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, 100%. And it is funny when you kind of take a step back and look at it, because there are a lot of people that look at things and like you started saying in the beginning, is that people want to be told what to do. So then the high school football program rolls out and they get Scott Cochran's program at Alabama. And they're like, Alabama's the best team in the country. This is making them the best team in the country. But those kids worked tirelessly, you would think, to get to that level.
Well, the talent.
Well, there's that too. But there's not a high school football team in the South now that doesn't have a strength coach, and these kids aren't training, and they put the work in to get to this, but they just want to do this. And you see it everywhere with it, and it's really fascinating in a way.
It's kind of discouraging, though, is when I speak to coaches as well, because sometimes that high school strength coach or the high school coach that's running the weight program has 15, 20 years experience working with, high school kids are beginners when it comes to the weight room, and I can sit there and talk to them for an hour, 2 hours, and have them tell me everything that works, everything that they know carries over to developing a better athlete. But they're willing to throw all that out the window because somebody won a national championship, which is so fucked up, because I'm not saying that a national championship is easy to do by any means. That's a whole different level of coaching, motivation, leadership, talent, the whole 9 yards. But that whole program, from the athlete to the coaches to the administration, is completely different than a high school program. It's to mimic one tiny aspect is not going to work. If that, it's asinine to me. It doesn't make any sense. It would be like, the small business owner, mom and pop shop that's got, one person running it and a part-time employee trying to mimic all the corporate standards of a Fortune 500 company. It just doesn't fucking work. They can't afford it, for one thing. It's just crazy.
No, 100%. And I think that people understanding where they are and where things are going and knowing what that pinnacle is, but having that path to get there is ultimately what we're supposed to be doing anyway.
Yeah. It's really not that complicated if you're just even slightly, if you have the slight ability to look at yourself and to realize that you're not perfect, and where your shortcomings are, figure out where they are, because those are definitely things that you have to work on. But in sport, you definitely have to work on them. But in business, you got to also figure out where your strengths are. Because if you treat business the same way that you treat, athletics or powerlifting, to where the main goal is to bring up your weak points, you're going to go out of business. In business, you got to figure out your strengths and maximize those, because those are the things that other people aren't going to be able to compete with. And sometimes that gets misconstrued again, because they're trying to act as if, they're already someplace that they're not. So they're not being realistic with their own selves on what their capabilities are and what their strengths are. Their strengths could be completely different than that other person that they want to act as if they are like. And that strength could actually be the thing that propels them above that person that they would like to be like.
No doubt. And I think that that's an absolutely fantastic point and ties everything together. That whole idea of as if and where you're going and understanding the goods and the bads with everything that you're doing. It is something that we all, coaches, business people, whatever it is, need to be better at. And Dave, I can't thank you enough, not just for the time today, but for everything that you've done. I wouldn't be a coach still if it wasn't for Elite FTS. I started getting in and really caring about training because of the Q&A. And I am lucky enough to still have one of the first weight rooms that you guys put together. And those racks they look like it's still 2001, man.
That's cool, man.
It's really awesome. And everything that you've done for this field and everything you continue to do, man, this is an absolute honor, and I'm really happy that you were able to take the time today, man. This means the world to me. So thank you very much for everything you've done and continue to do.
Thank you, too.
I appreciate it, Dave. We'll be in touch real soon, man. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And a huge thank you to Elite FTS's Dave Tate for taking the time to be with us today. Guys, as always with Dave, open, honest, uncensored, candid sharing. I can't thank Dave enough for being on and being so open to share with us today. This is absolutely fantastic stuff. And as always, guys, if you enjoyed the talk, please share it through the social media outlet of your choice, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it may be. If you know somebody that could take something from it, tag them on the post, shoot it to them in a DM, tweet at them, whatever it is. As always, we're just trying to get the best information out there to all the great coaches that we possibly can. And as always, guys, thank you for everything that you do for us here at Central Virginia Sport Performance. We will be back next week with another awesome guest. We will see you then.